Let's look at a couple of lyrics from Irving Berlin, but before we do, let me tell you something about him. Here are a few pictures. He was a shriveled up little guy who didn't look too impressive, but he was the most successful songwriter of the entire 20th century. He wrote about 1,500 songs. He published his first song in 1907 and his last one in 1970. So his career spanned about three-quarters of the century. Among the songs he wrote that you definitely have heard of are God Bless America and White Christmas. You might also have heard of Alexander's Ragtime Band or Easter Parade. Irving Berlin was like Cole Porter in that he wrote both music and lyrics. But Porter and Berlin had really different backgrounds. Irving Berlin was born into a poor Jewish family in Russia. The family immigrated to the United States when Berlin was only 4 years old. The father died almost immediately, and the rest of the family nearly starved to death. Berlin grew up on the streets of the Lower East Side of New York, begging for pennies. He had almost no formal education. He learned to speak English on the streets. How he came to be the most popular songwriter of the 20th century and the wealthiest man in show business is quite a story. But we don't have time for it here. The point I want to make here is that Irving Berlin wrote differently from Cole Porter. Berlin's lyrics are typically simple, straightforward, not fancy. Instead of using lots of poetic devices, Berlin tends to use only one or two. Instead of using fancy words, he uses simple words. Let's look at a couple of brief examples. Berlin might use wit, but it is never tinged with naughtiness like Cole Porter's. Irving Berlin loved America. Why wouldn't he? Nowhere else in the world could he have made something of himself like he did here. So he looked at the world in a completely different way from Cole Porter. All right, let's look at how deep is the ocean. This lyric is from a popular Tin Pan Alley song. It wasn't written as part of a film or a Broadway show. Its simplicity is in keeping with Irving Berlin's style. It was published in 1925. There are 4 stanzas of 4 lines. 15 of the 16 lines pose questions. Only one line, the second one, makes a statement. The whole lyric is built on rhetorical questions. Note that the poet never quantifies how much he loves the person being addressed, because it's not possible. The purpose of the poet's expression is to convey how impossible it is to measure his love. How much do I love you? I'll tell you no lie. How deep is the ocean? How high is the sky? How many times in a day do I think of you? How many roses are sprinkled with dew? How far would I travel just to be where you are? How far is the journey from here to a star? And if I ever lost you, how much would I cry? How deep is the ocean? How high is the sky? It's wonderfully simple. Irving Berlin works altogether differently from Cole Porter. Cole Porter's lyrics are complicated and multi-layered. Irving Berlin's are perfectly transparent. Cole Porter uses a basketful of poetic techniques. Irving Berlin uses just a few, and often he builds an entire lyric around one poetic device, in this case, rhetorical questions. Here's another example. This is another Tin Pan Alley song from 1925, very popular, Remember. Remember the night you said I love you. Remember? Remember you vowed by all the stars above you. Remember? Remember we found a lonely spot, and after I learned to care a lot, you promised that you'd forget me not, but you forgot to remember. As in the previous lyric, this one features a speaker addressing a loved one. In this lyric, things haven't worked out so well. This is a love-lost song. It's perfectly simple. The thing that makes the lyric so poetic is that the whole thing turns on an oxymoron. Forgot to remember. Remember, an oxymoron is two words put together that logically contradict one another. In a strictly logical way, we can't forget to remember. But in this context, when the speaker uses that oxymoron, we know exactly what has happened. Again, very different from Cole Porter. You can hear the audio files of these songs on CourseWeb.